Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are all doing well. Today I want to just sit down, grab my journal, and chat with you a bit about some of my early thoughts on my journal migration, which I'm going to be doing in July. As I've been approaching that mid-year mark where I know I'm going to be starting a new book, I've been starting to think about the things I want to change in my system, as well as if I want to change the actual physical book that I'm using and modify my system in that way. So I thought I would just share some of my early thoughts that I've been having and just some of the things that I've been thinking about with this journal switch coming down the line. So first I was thinking, before I get into the different books I'm considering and the different system options, I thought I would first talk about how it's going with my current journal, which is this A6 Stalogy Notebook. And actually, I'll leave it like this because this is the first thing I want to talk about, but this is the half-year version, so it has 368 pages. And how it's going? Well, as you can tell by my journal, it is, let me see, this is like not, this is not touching it. This is how it's going. My journal has gotten ridiculously chunky, and maybe I can go into why. So this year I've been having a lot of fun with pasting in different photos, and let me find a page for you, and like ephemera into my journal like this. So I've been printing out photos with my Canon printer, sticking those in. I've been like sticking in different like photos and receipts and just a bunch of other pieces of paper. And because of that, the journal has been chunking, which I anticipated and I embraced. I also bought a pencil board here to help deal with that. This is the 2023 spring edition of the pencil board from Hobonichi. So the pencil board has definitely been helping, but what's also been happening is I have been chunking up my journal at the front in my planner section, and then in the back of my journal I have my commonplace section. So the front has been chunking up because I paste things in, and then the back, which is over here, has also been chunking up considerably because I've been pasting things in here too, like different reference materials, like some printouts from Reddit on Stardew Valley, which is a game that I've started playing. And then, if I'm being honest with myself, the real cause of the chunking is because I went in the week before the new Breath of the Wild sequel game came out, Tears of the Kingdom, and I made maps and I printed out maps of the game. And if you're watching this and you're wondering what Breath of the Wild is, it's essentially a video game where you unlock different parts of the map, and it's very exploration based. And one of my favorite parts of the game is to kind of figure out the map and figure out things on the map. And I thought it would be so fun to have my own little reference log in my journal of the maps and things that I thought were important. So I went in and I printed all 15 maps from the game and added my dots to kind of note different places, and this was super fun, and it was quite a bit of work, but it was so cool to do, and it's so fun to just flip through now. However, as you can probably tell, oh, this page I ripped up because I peeled this off. You know, when you're printing out 15 printer pages of maps, it tends to chunk up your journal considerably, and that there is essentially what also has been contributing. My commonplace section is getting really thick. You can kind of see the section there, and then my journal is getting thick, and it got to the point where I went to write some things down. I'm kind of behind on my May calendar, but I went to write some things down in my calendar, and because the journal's gotten so thick, I'm just gonna not touch it for a minute. You can see here, it's kind of caused a lot of buildup on the spine, which is making it very hard to write on the calendar pages, which I have at the front of the book. So I plan to finish this book in June and complete it, but one of the things I've been thinking about for the next book is maybe trying to figure something out so that I'm not struggling to write in my journal by the time I finish it. So, besides that, there were a couple other things that I thought about in my journal when I was thinking about other things I wanted to change. The biggest one is the chunking, but there were a couple other small ones. First small one was the effort to set up the pages. Because I set up all the pages at the beginning, generally, when I start a new book, it tends to be all the effort at the beginning before I start the book. And this year, what I did was I did mostly pen, but I did hand lettering titles for the month. And then I also did stamping for the daily logs. And then I also did hand lettering for these kind of monthly dashboards or landing pages. But one of the things that I found was stamping out 182 days for half a year was a lot of work. And when I was thinking about doing it again for the next journal, I was kind of dreading it. So I made the executive decision that I would perhaps not stamp out my dates for next year and maybe write them in instead, so that I'm just kind of reducing that effort that is required. So that is kind of one thing that I've been thinking about, as well as the monthly pages. I think I'm going to simplify these as well. So those are kind of the two main things. One, reducing the chunk and simplifying my layout so they're easier to set up and lower effort, so I can just focus my time on actually journaling in my notebook and doing the actual logging itself, not setting up the pages. So those are kind of the two things that I was thinking in my mind that I wanted to really focus on changing for next quarter, next half of the year, shall we call it, essentially for the rest of 2023. So with that in mind, I came up with a couple options for myself to consider. So let me grab a couple different books. Some of them weren't even true options. I'll put my current book here. They were just things I was curious about. I am a very big Stalogy user. I've used this notebook, I think, since 2018, 2019 in various sizes and different orientations, but I always do like using the Stalogy. However, I wanted to check out some other books, so I did pick up some just to like test out and see when I was thinking about different options. The first one that I picked up on Amazon was a kind of similar book to the Stalogy. This is called the Zequenz Notebook. I picked this up because I thought that it might be cool to use 4mm grid, which is smaller than the Stalogy notebook. The Stalogy notebook has 5mm grid, and it also has this kind of weird thing at the top where you can circle dates, which I just have never used. So I picked up the Zequenz thinking like, hey, maybe I could use a smaller grid. I could eliminate that weird date, and what I could also do is I could have a year of my planner / journal in this notebook, and then what I could do was I could separate out the commonplace book, which was causing a lot of chunking in its own right, into a separate notebook, and then that might help reduce the bulk. And for me, two of the things that kind of made me possibly sway away from this is, one, I found that with this notebook, because it has 400 pages, it's very thick, as you can see. Let me grab. Well, even with my super thick Stalogy, you can see the difference in the spines are quite significant. So something I didn't realize until I got the book was writing at the front, which is where I keep my calendars, so I tend to use the front of the book quite a bit. Writing at the front was going to be a bit tricky because you have your page, but then you have the rest of the book. So unless you put something under the book here, it's pretty hard to use these front pages. Once you get further into the book, it does start to lie flat a little bit, but definitely it was the kind of thing where I realized I'd have to be forcing down the pages to be able to write in the notebook. And one of the things that's super important to me is being able to write in my notebook. So that was a bit of a stopper. That was a bit of a blocker for me. In case you're curious, I did test out my pen, which I use, which is the Sarasa Brown Gray, and it probably has a similar amount of ghosting to the Stalogy, so very comparable in that sense. And the grid is really nice too. The grid is super light, which is nice, but I just felt like this book was very chunky and I think I would have a hard time writing in it. So I'll probably use this for something else because I always like to have spare notebooks sitting around. So it'll be used for something, but probably not my journal in July. Besides the Zequenz, I also considered a couple other books, which I will bring out here. And these are the half-year Stalogy, so same notebook as my current book. The only difference is that it is half the amount of pages. It has 192 pages instead of 368. And then the Field Notes book, which is a 48-page pocket-sized grid notebook, although it does come in lined and blank as well. So with these options, I was kind of still thinking that the plan with the Zequenz to have the journal separate from the commonplace was a good idea, because then I would be splitting the bulk. And because I was kind of straying away from this concept of having everything from the whole year in terms of my planner and journal in one book, I was also thinking if I'm changing book every 6 or less months, having that commonplace section in a separate book might be a good idea, because for me, I don't commonplace a ton. I don't have a ton of long-term collections or information that I would be writing in a 6-month period. So because of that, having one book to reference the entire year or even work on and keep on using past that year would be probably very helpful. So I felt like the commonplace book being separate was an idea I still wanted to stick with, but the question came down to, one, what notebook do I want to use for my journal and planner? And what notebook do I want to choose to help reduce the chunking so it can be easy to use, and also I can be changing enough so that when I inevitably get bored, I'm probably close to the point of switching books, so I can kind of hold out and make it. And then 2, what kind of notebook do I want to use for my commonplace? So how do those books come together, and how are they going to work together? So for this, I kind of thought of a couple things. One thing I thought about was using a field notes for commonplacing. So this one I just stuck a photo on, but this is how the book appears, and it comes in a 3-pack. I think these books are super cool. It has a brown grid, which I love the color brown, so big fan. But the one thing I wasn't sure about, and what kind of stopped me, was I felt like the paper size was a bit small for note-taking for me. And I think this book, if I do use it, I was thinking about it more, would be super helpful as kind of a daily journal for just writing down thoughts, because I think it would be really good for that. But definitely when I got this in the mail, I realized that for writing notes, for me, it's a little bit small. However, I have seen other people do super cool commonplace notebooks in this, and they look really fun, so maybe an option for you. But for me, I think if anything, I'll use this as kind of a thoughts journal. And besides the field notes, the other notebook I considered for commonplacing as well as planning was setting up 2 half-year Stalogies. So having one as my journal and planner, and then one as my commonplace book. And then one as my commonplace book. Very similar to the Hobonichi Avec with the notebook combination that I've seen a lot of people use. The only difference is that I set up my own journal, so I would not be doing that. Although I will say I did consider Hobonichi. I just find that the layouts in the Tomoe River paper I don't think would work for me because I keep a bullet journal. I'm very used to being very customized in my layouts and being able to make them so that they are perfect for what I want. So I thought about the Hobonichi, but I don't know if I would be able to stick in it because I do like the control of being able to set up my bullet journal how I want it. So yeah, we thought about the field notes, we thought about the Zequenz, and then I think what I'm at least now thinking of settling on is a half-year Stalogy for my commonplace, or if you're a bullet journaler, collections. So those kind of longer term notes and pieces of research and reference material. And then having a separate book that I would keep for my journal. I'm either going to do, and I'm still not decided on this yet, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm either going to set up another Stalogy for the next 6 months and just have one book, or I'm going to do 2 half-year notebooks for 3 months and 3 months. And I think that should also reduce the chunking. I'm not sure what I want to do, but I do think that once 2024 hits, I'm going to do one of these every 4 months. So I'll have 3 planning notebooks, one for each kind of season, I guess, every 4 months. So I'll swap these every 4 months, and then I'll have the 4th book be the commonplace book, and I'll just put, let me see here. I have 2 of these. So I would have both books like this, and then I would slip them in my, I'm not gonna unwrap them, but I would slip them into my traveler's notebook cover like this and just have one on each side. And then I would be able to swap out this front book, which would be my journal when it's done, but I would always have the commonplace in the back. I think that's gonna make a lot of sense. And I think that will work for me. I just have to figure out what I wanna do for the next 6 months, because for this approach to work, you would do 4-month increments per book, but 6 months can't really break into 4 very easily. So I'll either do 2 of these for 3 months, or I'll do 1 for 6. And the last thing that I'm planning to do is I am planning to, I'll just break this out one more time. I'm planning to, instead of stamping the days like this, what I'm going to do is I think I will set up my calendars at the beginning of the book. So for how many months I think I'll be in the book, I'll make that number of calendars. So it'll either be 6 or 3, depending on if I go with the larger, smaller Stalogy. And then in this book, what I did immediately after was I set up my dashboard and then stamped out all my dates. So each day was set out for itself. And I think in my next book, what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna set these up in advance. And that's because I think it would be nice to allow myself to have more pages per day if I need them. And the reason why I was thinking about that was I was looking at my commonplace section over here, and I noticed that a lot of the entries that I have in here aren't really always reference information. Some of them are, like this, which is information that I would want to reference over the year and doesn't apply to a date, but some of them, like this sticker, were overflow pieces that I hadn't stuck on the daily page because I probably didn't have room, or I had another thing stuck in already, but I wanted to include it in my journal. So what I did was I put it in my commonplace book, which is fine, and it worked for this, but I was thinking if I allow myself to make pages as I go and set up the day as I go, instead of putting these things in the commonplace or reference book, I can just stick them directly on the day by either setting up a half page beside the daily log or allowing myself 2 pages per day. And because of how many pages there are in the full and the half year Stalogy, I did the math and I would be able to have that flexibility to add more than 1 page per day if I wanted it. And I think that would be nice, because it would be nice to have these things on the day that they happened so that I could have that archived in a more chronological way. So that is kind of the plan. We're gonna probably write out all our spreads so that it's easier, which I'm excited about, because the less effort, the better, honestly, when it comes to my journal. I like to do the journaling. I don't like to set up the journal as much, but I do like that control, which is why I haven't just bought a planner. And then we're gonna either do 2 3-month journals to, again, reduce the bulk, help reduce the boredom, feel like we're keeping things fresh, or I'll just do 1 6-month book. I'll probably decide closer to the date, but that is the plan for now. So yes, that was a long ramble on some of the thoughts that I've been having for setting up my new journal in July. I think I'm gonna do the 2 half-year Stalogies, but who knows what could happen in the next month. So we will see what I decide, but I will let you know what I do decide, and I might film a setup video if I manage to capture some good lighting and sit down and do it on camera. So stay tuned for that. I will try to make that happen for you. And besides that, let me know what you're thinking for your upcoming book. What kind of changes are you thinking of making? Are you completely switching up your system? And besides that, I hope that you have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!